It's another edition of Football Friday. I'm Jenny Carlson here with our college football coverage team, joined in studio by Barry Trammell, columnist, OSU beat writer Kyle Fredrickson, and from her home in Norman, it's the birthday girl, Brooke Pryor. Happy birthday, Brooke.
Thanks, guys.
You're what, 20 today or something ridiculous like that?
I'm just able to drink. Woohoo!
I think she's a little older than that, folks, but not very much. Might be able to rent a car now. Barry, maybe she could rent the car next time.
Points.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I got sports coats older than Tobacco Road.
And on that note, well, let's start with OSU because they have the game, I think, of the week, really, in the Big 12 with West Virginia coming to town, an unexpected first-place West Virginia team in the Big 12, undefeated right now. I mean, before this season began, I don't think a lot of people would have thought this OSU-West Virginia game would be potentially biggest game of the year for the Cowboys and maybe the Mountaineers having to go on the road and win. Potentially Mike Gundy's 100th win. I mean, you keep adding up different things. Homecoming, which obviously it's the first anniversary since the crash last year. Dana Holgerson's undefeated. Joe Wickline's on his staff. All of this tiling up for a lot of intrigue in this game. So let's start with just the magnitude of this game, Kyle. I mean, you look at West Virginia and you expect offense, but it looks like defense may be the definitive thing about these Mountaineers. How much of a challenge are the Cowboys up for on Saturday?
Yeah, well, it's fascinating because it's Dana Holgerson, it's the air raid, it's what we come to expect when thinking about his teams, what he did at OSU in 2010. West Virginia's greatest strength at this point is probably just their balance, whether it be on offense, the way that they're able to throw and rush the football with a senior quarterback. But you brought up the defense. This is one of the best scoring defenses in the league, less than 20 points a game. Even though they lost some guys who are in the NFL now who are on that defensive backfield just a season ago, it's been pretty fascinating. And with this 3-3-5 they run, it kind of is a different look for this conference and this league, not a typical four-man front that we've seen across the Big 12. It's going to give OSU some problems. It did last year. Mason Rudolph only completed 50% of his passes, threw 3 picks. It was on the road, but at the same time, it's a difficult defense, especially for a first-year quarterback. We'll see how he does in his second year.
Well, Barry, you had a chance to catch up with Dana Holgerson, the aforementioned air raid master. He brought the air raid to Stillwater, so people there obviously know what a great offensive mind he is. They're still scoring points in Morgantown, but defense really is the hallmark. What changed? Has Dana Holgerson is this a case of the body snatchers? Has something happened to Dana Holgerson?
Well, Dana did have a revelation. He had an epiphany, and it was about the time that Baylor was scoring 63 on him, or when OU was scoring 50, or OSU 55. Bunch of big numbers were put up on Dana's first team in the Big 12 in 2012. And he said, I just realized I got to do something to help my defense. So he made more emphasis on recruiting. He started calling games differently, trying to run the ball more, try to conduct practices where it's not just whatever the offense needs and wants, it's also to help the defense. And, it's taken a while, but now we've seen that West Virginia plays some pretty solid defense. Last year, pretty good. This year, really good. The same two offenses that lit up the Sooners. TCU scored 46, Texas Tech 59 on Oklahoma. West Virginia's given up 10 and 17.
Wow.
So they're playing really good defense.
Well, it sounds like a lot, as you mentioned, Kyle, going to be on Mason Rudolph in this game, which maybe that's fitting in the chance that Mike Gundy has to win 100, that a quarterback would have to have a good game. I mean, obviously a former quarterback himself. Sort of try to put in perspective the magnitude of 100. I mean, it's obviously a big number, but put that in perspective with OSU and Mike Gundy in specific.
Well, he'd be OSU's first 100-win coach, and something Barry pointed out this week is that most schools in the country have one of those already. Not a lot of them have multiple guys, but for a program like OSU, I think what it really shows is the way Mike Gundy has built this program. He was at the head of it when they made the surge into sort of the national spotlight, when that brand, that OSU brand, became sort of a national brand in a lot of ways, when Brandon Whedon led that team to the BCS Bowl victory. So, it's big time in the fact that one guy has been here this long. Coaches and players talk about it. Glenn Spencer talks about the stability of the program, knowing that, there's a certain way things are done here, and when they're not meeting that standard, those people come and go, but Mike Gundy's going to stay. I think it just for Gundy in specific, I don't know that for him this means a whole lot. It's really just an opportunity for us to talk about it with him and sort of allow him to reflect on it, because that's something he said. In this business, you're working so much and the outcomes are so go, 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 to take some time to sit back and think, wow, this was a real special ride. If anything, maybe it just gives him a second before kickoff to think about that.
Well, and I know you're working on a story that takes us back to the origins of Mike Gundy and OSU, and we'll get a chance to read that in the Saturday Oklahoman in the pregame section and online. And Barry, I'm curious, I mean, you've been around a minute, seen Mike Gundy at a young age. Did you think he might become the first OSU coach to reach triple digits, whether it happens this week or some week down the line? It's going to happen. Did you think Mike Gundy was a possible head coach at OSU someday?
No, heck no, I didn't. All I knew is he's sort of a quick-mouthed, cocky high school quarterback at Midwest City.
Yeah.
Of course, if you grew up in Norman in the '70s, you thought everybody from Midwest City was cocky. But no, you could tell he had natural leadership abilities. You could tell people were drawn to him. I had no idea what was going to happen to him after playing, but in the it became clear when he had the relationship with Pat Jones and he was the quarterback. It was clear that his future was going to be in coaching and that he would get some opportunities, and Pat put him on the first year. He went straight from quarterbacking to coaching receivers at Oklahoma State. So, even after he got the head coaching job, though, there was no great reason to think, 100 wins, because, I don't know that people, you mentioned it, Fieldhouse, about, this is really sort of a great run and a great stretch for Oklahoma State football. Even after Les Miles, Les was here 4 years and had 3 solid years, but not great years. Mm-hmm. And he started out 4-7, I think. So it's not like anybody was winning consistently big. And for Oklahoma State to be now where it's at, which is frankly, over the last 10 years, is OSU's the number 2 program in the Big 12 in terms of sustained
wins,
success.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So for Gundy to get that accomplished is an excellent achievement. And, it is a great run for OSU football.
Well, we'll talk more about OSU and this West Virginia game, which obviously, as we said, a big game Saturday at 11 o'clock in Stillwater. But let's turn for a second to OU, who has a 6 o'clock kickoff on Saturday against Kansas. Hasn't beat a team not named in the Big 12, not named Iowa State in 3 years. So you got to think OU's winning this game. But, Brooke, obviously a lot of discussion this week about Mike Stoops, his job security. As far as we know, he still is the defensive coordinator of the Sooners. But what about the OU defense as it faces Kansas? I mean, is it possible that the defense can play well enough to take some heat off? Or the fact that this is Kansas, does that negate any positives that this defense might be able to garner out of a big win on Saturday?
I think there is a lot that OU can get out of this game. Obviously, it's pretty much guaranteed that they're going to win this game, knock on wood, whatever other superstitions everyone needs. But I still think that OU wins this game handily, but I think the defense is playing for more than just a win. I don't know if it's hyperbole or if it's too far gone to say they're playing for Mike Stoops' job, but I think that he and the defense really need to have a strong showing, because if they let Kansas score, 21, 22 points, 30 points, whatever it is, I think the fan base is going to be really upset, and probably rightfully so. You come off a week where you give up 59 points at Texas Tech, and not that that's expected, but you can see how when Mahomes is on, they have this high-powered offense. Tech is going to put up a lot of points. Kansas, however, has shown that they can't really be offensively reliable. They're not the same kind of air raid spread offense, just constant assault that Tech was. So you'd think that OU would have a better chance of shutting this team down and really proving a point that they can rebound and they can have a good effort this weekend. But, I think OU needs to hold Kansas to 10 points or less to really come out of this game feeling good.
Well, we saw Kansas a week ago. I say we, Kyle and I, up in Lawrence, an offense that has struggled. Cozart re-establishing his starting role at quarterback, but they definitely struggled, only 7 points after halftime, and really struggled against OSU defense. Barry, Brooke talks about Mike Stoops' job security. Bob mentioned earlier this week, hey, this is the same guy that led the same defense a year ago, and it's a Big 12 championship team. It's a Final Four team. This is still a team in the lead for the Big 12 race. They're undefeated in Big 12 play. What is the state of Mike Stoops' job?
Well, I think it's pretty solid. I mean, his brother's the head coach, so I mean, I don't. I would be stunned if Bob Stoops ever fired Mike Stoops. That would stun me. However, it's clear that it's not working.
Yeah.
I mean, that much we can say. I mean, they're getting continually lit up on a regular basis. Now, does that mean the new coach is needed? I don't know. I don't think it's the schemes. I didn't see a lot of confusion down in Lubbock. I didn't see a bunch of Tech guys running wide open. I saw a bunch of guys not making plays, missed tackles, not making plays on the ball when they were in position to. I think it's a talent problem. That's Mike Stoops' fault also, if it's true. You know, Bob has made some decisions, coaching staff changes, based on recruiting a lot. And, you know, that might be where he needs to focus his changes. How much is Mike Stoops involved in that? Can't say, don't know. But it's a case of something clearly is not working. I don't see how, you know, if Kansas has a good game offensively, that's only going to intensify the situation. No reason they should. Kansas really can't throw the ball deep very well, despite a couple of nice plays against OSU. But, you know, Oklahoma ought to be able to shut down the Jayhawks.
Well, Barry, you talk about guys not making plays. And that sort of begs the question in my mind. Does that mean, I mean, obviously their talent is deficient for the scheme, but does the scheme need to change to make up for that? Or, I mean, yes, the defense won last year, but they had different players. Let's remember, you're losing Charles Tapper, you're losing Eric Stryker, you're losing Zach Sanchez, Dom Alexander, on and on down the list. So do they need to change the scheme? I guess what I'm coming around to, is it fixable with the guys they currently have?
I don't think so. I mean, I think that's what they've got. I don't think it's scheme at all. You look at the last year's success, especially down the stretch. You know, part of that's who they played against. They didn't have to play Trevon Boykin against TCU. They didn't have to play Seth Russell with Baylor. They didn't have to play Mason Rudolph with OSU. Three straight contenders missing their quarterback. You know, if somebody gets to play OU without Baker Mayfield, like, guess what? Their defense is going to look better. So, you know, I just think last year, I'm not saying the defense was bad. I thought the defense held up decently to some degree in the Orange Bowl, but despite a lot of injuries. So it wasn't a house on fire last year, but this year it is. You mentioned the guys that are gone. I don't think it's a scheme. Last week in Lubbock, we saw, I mean, two of the better players, in theory, on the defense, longtime veterans, leaders, Ahmad Thomas, Jordan Evans, just didn't do anything. I mean, Ahmad Thomas is a jump ball, and he's just sort of standing there, and the Tech guy runs up and gets it, and Thomas stands there. Jordan Evans just sort of waves at running backs or receivers in the open and doesn't get a shoulder pad on them. So, you know, I think the Sooners just need a serious upgrade of talent.
Yeah. Well, Brooke, you talk about guys not making plays when maybe they are in position to make them. Does that come down to pride? I mean, you know, like I said, you've got a team that right now is still in the lead for the Big 12, but obviously they have left on their schedule after this Kansas game Saturday, a short week to prepare for Iowa State, but another bottom of the league team. Then comes the gauntlet at the end with Baylor, West Virginia, and Oklahoma State, who offensively can stretch the Sooners again. Does it come down to guys just playing harder? Do they have to just play harder and get into, maybe not into better positions, but when they are in position, make plays? Because it sounds like guys might have not been giving maximum effort at Lubbock.
That is certainly what it sounds like, especially in talking with, I mean, the coaches, the players this week. They've all, I mean, Jordan Evans said it was unacceptable and he won't do it again. You know, do I believe that? I mean, I think he knows that it was unacceptable, but could it happen again? Possibly. I mean, what was it Saturday that caused them just to not have the effort? You could see it. I mean, there were loafs around the field. They said, Jordan Thomas said that they were going to start counting loafs and stuff like that and counting when guys weren't making an effort to get to the ball. But I don't know how much of that is fixable. You would think that after giving up 59 points, that would call their pride into question. You know, Mike Stoops kind of said, if this doesn't hurt your pride, then what are you doing here? kind of thing. So I think this is going to be, last week's performance was a gut check for a lot of guys, and the way that they respond this week is going to kind of dictate how the rest of the season is going to go defensively, because obviously the offense has plenty of pride. They are doing well. They are very much playing like a top 25, even top 10 team. The defense on the other side looks downtrodden. They look beaten before they're even, should be tired in a game, before the second half, before the fourth quarter. So I think, this week's going to tell a lot, and I think that the defense has to show some kind of pride, something to fight for, because right now they're not doing a whole lot of that on the field.
Yeah, it seems like as much as anything, this may be a chance for some confidence to be reinstilled in the defense, and then whatever they do with that remains to be seen. But clearly a team that their psyche is damaged right now, our defense, a unit that their psyche is damaged. Want to remind people you're watching Football Friday, our weekly look at college football to get you ready for Saturday's games. We've got two important ones, I guess you could say. Maybe not big in the grand scheme of things when it comes to that Kansas OU game, but important nonetheless. Let's get back to OSU for a second. Kyle, wanted to ask you, I mentioned off the top that this is homecoming, which is a huge event in Stillwater. It's a huge event around the country and a lot of campuses, but OSU really kicks it up a notch with just so many events, probably upwards of 100,000 people that end up on campus in Stillwater on game day. But obviously a year ago was the crash during the homecoming parade. Is there any residual in terms of just changes that people may see, or even things that may affect the team on a homecoming Saturday, things that maybe they're doing different after what happened a year ago?
Well, the major real changes from this are with the parade and the safety of the people watching it, how the parade is functioning to sort of create barriers that can't be crossed so something like this doesn't happen again. For players and coaches, it's just sort of a reminder of sort of just yet another tragedy to strike this school. We saw it with Tyreek Coger passing away from the basketball team during a workout this summer. We can talk about the plane crashes throughout history. So this community has always sort of rallied around horrible things happening, for better or for worse. And that's sort of a testament to their character. That's something that Mike Gundy stressed this week. It was something he stressed right after the game. Homecoming is special to us. Nothing is going to change from this. I think in their minds, it's just a reminder of how great that event is. Because like you mentioned, it's one of the largest in the country. For that type of crash to happen when the highest volume of people and alums are in town, it's kind of incomprehensible. So, in terms of how that's going to work on game day with honoring those victims and the families who are still dealing with the aftermath, I'm sure it's been very well, taken care of and very detail-oriented. They take a lot of pride in that stuff. Larry Reese does a great job organizing some of those events. So it'll be something that's going to have to be noted and remembered as the Cowboys, of course, have a really big game on their plate. They really don't want anything distracting them at this point.
Yeah, and it's strange that John Helsley, your cohort covering OSU, did a story earlier this week about the players and how they sort of had to take a pause last year when the crash happened and news started to trickle out and check on their family and friends, because obviously they're sequestered in the hotel getting ready for the game, and then all of a sudden this news breaks. And just a surreal day. You and I were both there last year. Just extremely surreal. And yeah, I'm sure that there will be some special things done. I've heard horseless riders for the 4 victims will be part of the parade. So lots of good stuff that's going to happen after what was unfortunately a bad day. Another remembrance, though, if you will, is the 1945 OSU National Championship team. Trophy's going to be in town. You have got a fantastic story getting ready to queue up. People will be able to see it online this afternoon. They'll be in their Oklahoman on Saturday. But you caught up with some members of that 45 team, and there aren't too many left, unfortunately.
Yeah, this story is funny because on its surface, if I tell people, hey, I'm writing about that 45 championship team, the first reaction is, well, what are you doing that? They don't deserve that. That's bogus. Who cares all these years later? Well, the cool thing about it was the actual guys who were living in it and living through it and played in that era of football. It's just fascinating how much different life was back then. And like you had mentioned, there's only a few of them left. So to sort of tell their stories in a way that shows who they were then and who they are now, I think it's a good way for people to get to know these guys as, they are presented at some point during the game. At least a few will be in attendance who are either a family member of that team or on that team. So yeah, it was a fun project to work on because we kind of see the humanity and what this award actually means, from a guy who's seen a lot in his life.
Right, and Barry, there's been a lot of talk about this. American Football Coaches Association retroactively going back and awarding this 45 team the championship. Should they have? Should they not? Should the Army team that was so revered from that year, is there any argument that they're the team? But regardless of that, it's pretty cool to hear some of these stories of the individuals. We heard the first day, the Fenimore family, Bob Fenimore's family, obviously really touched by this. It's really been a positive thing for so many people that were involved with that 45 team, whether directly or indirectly.
Well, I applaud anything that celebrates history or makes people take a look at history. So too often we think that anything that happened more than 15, 20 years ago doesn't matter. Sports helps us remind us, that that's not so. But when you and one problem with OSU football is, it doesn't have a great and glorious history necessarily. And what it does have isn't always celebrated. They do a pretty good job of celebrating their basketball heritage at OSU, not so much their football. All kinds of cool people have been involved with OSU football over the years. Pappy Waldorf coached at OSU. Most people don't know that, but he was a legendary football coach across the country. Alex Exendine was a football coach at OSU in the 1930s. He played football at Carlisle with Jim Thorpe. All kinds of cool stuff. But we just forget about it. And when something like this happens, it makes us stop and look at 1945 and Bob Fenimore and that great team and what they did. And so, I applaud anything that makes us stop and take stock of history. Were they as good as Army? I don't think so. Everybody says Army not just was the best team of 45, one of the best teams of all time. I've got military historians that have written me and told me why Army was so good. It was literally they had most of the best athletes in America. So, it's not a mystery, but 70 years ago. Let's not. I don't really want to debate the 1991 national title, much less 1945. So let's just celebrate what was a cool season at OSU.
Yeah, definitely so. Another bit of history, although much shorter in its duration. 2 years ago, Brooke, was the year that Samaje Perine went crazy against Kansas. He will not be playing, obviously, this Saturday as an injury will keep him off the field. But they're obviously Kansas coming back to town. Joe Mixon having a huge game last week at Texas Tech. Is there a thought that perhaps Joe Mixon might have? I don't know if we'll see anything approaching what we saw with Samaje Perine 2 years ago, but is there a possible maybe 300-yard day out of Joe Mixon? What can we expect when Joe Mixon faces this Kansas defense?
I could see a 300-yard day. He had, 200 yards rushing, 100 receiving, or vice versa last week against Tech. So I think he could definitely get 300 yards rushing. He won't have to do it in the rain or anything like that, as epic as that would be to match Samaje Perine's day a couple of years ago. But I could see him having another really good game. He is the running back right now. Abdul Adams rotates in, not as much as, when Mixon and Perine were both healthy and kind of sharing those running back duties. But I think that Mixon has another good game. One thing that may prevent him from getting a 300-yard is if they get up really high and, there's no way he's going to get to Perine's 427-yard record from a couple of years ago. They may pull him at halftime or in the third quarter to keep him healthy because he had a couple injury concerns a couple of weeks ago. And I could see Abdul Adams getting more time. But again, I think Samaje got that record in a special circumstance a couple of years ago when they just let him run for it because he established that game so early on. So I don't know. He definitely has the capabilities of doing it. Whether or not they give him, that long of a leash to achieve it, I think that's the biggest question.
Yeah, because obviously the depth at running back has become a concern with Perine hurt and Rodney Anderson and on down the list. But Barry, for a school that's had such a long and proud running back tradition, for Samaje Perine to have the NCAA record for single game running, to be still making this assault. While he may fall a little bit short, but the assault on the all-time record, and now Joe Mixon with some of the records he's breaking. Put this into perspective for us. I mean, Joe Washington, Billy Sims, on down the list of great running backs at Oklahoma. That doesn't even really start to scratch the surface. These two guys and what they're doing, how significant? I mean, do we chalk it up as just the revolution of offenses that the numbers are all inflated, or what do you do with all of this?
Well, a lot of it is the inflation of offense, the more plays being snapped. Back when Steve Owens was the tailback and carried 55 times one game, it's not like the Sooners were throwing 50 times either. They threw 4 or 6 times. So the number of plays has expanded. Another thing in OU history is often their greatest teams shared the wealth. The split T in the 50s with Bud Wilkinson, 3 or 4 guys would carry the ball extensively in a game. The Wishbone era, same way. Very few times did OU all of a sudden just migrate to a heavy hitter at one tailback. So what we're seeing now is more just there's one tailback at a time. The quarterback really doesn't. They don't want the quarterback to run. There's no fullback that ever gets the ball. So Mixon and Perine are beneficiaries of that. We're seeing defenses that are beleaguered and stretched all over the field, trying to guard the deep pass, the side passes, all that stuff. You just hand it to Perine, and he's got all kinds of running room. So a lot of factors. Doesn't take away from how great they are. Mixon's doing historic things. Perine did historic things against Kansas 2 years ago. So it's just a different time.
Yeah. All right, guys, let's do some picks. Brooke, we'll start with you in this OU game. I think we've all got OU winning, pretty obvious, but break it down for us. What I think I saw you had 58-22. Get us behind those numbers.
Yeah, I think I have 58-20 of 22, one of those. I have, OU's offense continuing to do what it's been doing. Kansas's defense, I think, is a little bit better than Tech's, especially in talking with the Kansas beat writer this week. He said that, that's the one area where Kansas has really improved a lot. They've got a good D-end that's gotten a lot of sacks. So I can see the defensive numbers not being as prolific as last week, but still very impressive. Defensively, I'm not convinced that they will have fixed it enough to pitch a shutout or pitch a single-digit game. Maybe I will be pleasantly surprised, but that's just not what I see happening. I think that we're going to see a little bit more offense than OU would like to limit Kansas.
All right, Kyle, what about you?
Well, after seeing that Kansas defense last week, OSU was neck and neck with them for much of the game and still scored 44 points. So I think OU scores at least 60 this week. I think they start early and sort of use that momentum to build some confidence after what happened last week.
Well, it's interesting because in all of our picks, nobody picked a single-digit Kansas. I think we had several that went into the 20s. In fact, I think almost half of us picked in the 20s. Barry, what are you doing with this game?
I said 56-14. What you need to do with this game is study the roster before you go, because there's going to be some walk-ons playing, especially like at tailback that you've never heard of. OU's down to 2 scholarship tailbacks. If Joe Mixon carries more than 15 times in this game, Bob Stoops has lost his mind. I wouldn't give Abdul Adams many carries. You got to save him for the coming weeks. I'd make this the second half. I'd make this a walk-on show. Sooners should win easy. Kansas is better than they have been, but still not any good at all.
Yeah, I got OU 55-13, and I think the thing you can say is Kansas defense is improved, but their offense is not, and it's just too much stress on the Kansas defense. I think we'll see them give up plays. I just don't think that Oklahoma will struggle to score at all. So that's I think we all see a pretty easy day. Maybe not for Mike Stoops, but an easy day nonetheless for Oklahoma. All right, let's turn to OSU. Brooke, what do you got in terms of OSU West Virginia?
Oh, I have West Virginia winning by a point, 27-26. That's just based on, I think West Virginia's played pretty well recently. I'm not sure that OSU just has what it takes to get past the Mountaineers and their defense.
Kyle, what about it?
Yeah, I think for OSU, if they had a healthy Larry Williams and if we saw them just stomp Kansas and play the way we sort of expected them to play, this would be a game where I'd pick OSU to win. But just considering all the variables here and how well balanced West Virginia really is, talking about them earlier, I think that some of those holes in OSU's offensive line is going to have a bit of a trickle-down effect. Haven't seen enough from this OSU defense quite yet to think that they can go against an offense like this and prevent them from running the ball and throwing it as well as they had, with Skylar Howard making great decisions. If OSU can pressure the quarterback, they have a great chance to win, but I'm picking West Virginia 38-35.
Yeah, I think of all of our picks, we had one person pick OSU, but I don't think more than one of us picked a double digit. So all of us were really close. Barry, you had West Virginia close.
I got Mountaineers 28-27. It really comes down to this. OSU hadn't played that well this season. I mean, didn't play well against Central Michigan. That's why the game was screwy at the end. Played okay against Pitt. Played okay at Baylor, but made too many mistakes and didn't score. Texas was an okay win, but monkeyed around with Iowa State, monkeyed around with Kansas. That's not the sign of a team that's going to beat somebody in the top 10. So, OSU could win, but so far they haven't shown me that it's a special team.
Yeah, I've got West Virginia winning by a touchdown, and I could see OSU winning. There's no doubt about that. I think it's entirely possible OSU wins this game, but maybe this is the TCU game from last year. Remember when it was just kind of, muddling along, and then all of a sudden OSU goes out and absolutely throttles TCU at home? Maybe that's this game, and we're all looking at it and saying, wow, look at this accelerator OSU's hit. But West Virginia is a good team. They're a really good team. So I think it's going to be a heck of a ball game. That one kicks at 11 o'clock again on Saturday, and then OU and Kansas will kick at 6 o'clock on Saturday evening. Be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com and every day in the Oklahoman.